February rolls around right at the start, February 1st, UBS announces that based on their data, ChatGPT hit 100 million users in January. So fastest growing consumer technology in history, consumer application in history. And that came out in a Reuters article. So we now knew, again, it was users, like it could be people tried it once, but 100 million is obviously a very significant number. And I was starting to feel that I was getting, text messages from family members asking what this stuff is and how it works. Again, lots of calls from teachers and, professors and just people I wouldn't normally hear from that were testing the technology and trying to understand the impact it was going to have. February 6th, we had Google Bard announced. So Google set an important step in their journey and talked about the impact it had on search. But that Google Bard was coming. They were going to take one of their language models. And again, Google has thousands of AI researchers. At the time, they had 2 AI research labs. They had Deepmind and Google Brain. Those 2 labs later in the year would merge together to form Google Deepmind. But Google is not new to AI. They've been working aggressively on artificial intelligence for decades, since the founding of the company. And so Google Bard was announced as, I guess the simplest way to think about it is their version of ChatGPT. So if you haven't tried Google Bard, it is basically the ChatGPT. It is now available. You can go to bard.google.com and you can test it for yourself. I've tested it in many use cases. Generally speaking, GPT-4 in ChatGPT seems more powerful, better reasoning capabilities, more creative outputs. But we also know that the current version of Google Bard is not even close to the most advanced version that Google has access to or could put out into the world. So expect a lot in the second half of this year with more advanced versions of not only ChatGPT, but Google Bard and some of the other major players. So that was where we started to see Google taking action, though. There was a lot of talk early in the year about Microsoft sort of OpenAI caught Google off guard by releasing ChatGPT into the world. And Google sort of scrambled to figure out what does this mean and what do we do about it. And this was where we started to see the next steps they were going to take. So number 5 on our list, Google Bard is announced. Number 6, Microsoft announces AI-powered Bing and Edge. So in essence, that their GPT-4 was being brought to the search. And that has been a recurring theme is Microsoft's infusion of this OpenAI technology into the product. And again, Microsoft wasn't new to AI. Thousands of AI researchers been working on AI for decades at Microsoft, but they found it was going to be faster and more impactful to partner with OpenAI to bring their technology to market. In exchange, OpenAI gets all the compute power they need and all of Microsoft's expertise and distribution, meaning they have obviously millions of customers. Number 7, this one was an interesting one, sort of flies under the radar to start, but Meta publicly releases Llama under a non-commercial license focused on research use cases. So they gave a 65 billion parameter large language model, just means relatively big large language model, to researchers. So it flew under the radar because while they were opening this model to people as an alternative to working with like a GPT-4 or something, they didn't release all the details to the public of how it was built, what the weights were, what the training data was. Within 10 days, all of that information leaked out, though. And so what happened was it accelerated access to advanced open source large language models. And so in retrospect, this will probably be a very important moment, not only just in the first half of this year, but maybe in the history of the diffusion of this technology. It was really the first time we had a model like this that people could start building on. And so you started seeing innovative applications built on top of this within weeks once all the information was released about how it was built and what data was trained on, what the weights were. So a really important thing. And again, if you're new to this, it may be weird to think about like Facebook or Meta having a play here. They have one of the top AI research labs in the world run by Jan LeCun, and they formed it back in, it was like 2012 or 2013. So to me, like we talk so much about Google and Microsoft and OpenAI and some of these other players, the dark horses in all of this to me, to the general public and business world are probably going to be Meta and Apple. I don't think they get talked about nearly enough with what they're doing, in part because Apple doesn't talk about what they're doing. Meta does, but they just don't get much credit for it. So, I've historically not been the biggest fan of Facebook as a company. I generally still have some issues with the company, but their AI research is top notch and they continue to pump out research papers and models. And I don't think that's going to stop. I really think that within the, certainly the second half of this year, we're going to start to see Meta play a much larger role in all of this as it starts to get infused into their technology. And obviously, they have massive distribution with over 1 billion users or so of Facebook. So if they choose to put this stuff out into WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook, they can have a major play here. So keep an eye on Meta and keep an eye on Apple, which I'll talk about a bit later.